liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
You're tapped in, so let's get right to it. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the mayor of New York, ZOHAN Mamdani, is vowing, or at the very least entertaining, the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu should Netanyahu step foot in New York for a UN conference or delegation. Now, whether or not this is something he can legally do, many are saying it's a pipe dream. But nonetheless, it seems that Mamdani is doubling down on his claim that, hey, man, I really, have a hard on for this guy. I want to lock him up, for war crimes. There's a problem, though. There's a problem. And you guys need to know this, dealing with this type of situation, especially when we're talking about the sitting prime minister of the occupied nation of Israel, Zionist regime of Israel. There's more to it than, Mamdani just saying this is what he wants to do, because it is, it is moral. It's right, But again, law would trump the morality of what should be done as opposed to what can be done. So really, there's no legal authority for Mamdani to do this. The ICC, which is the International Court, there's a warrant in international law of those countries who are aligned with the ICC for the arrest of Netanyahu. However, the U.S. never signed on to the ICC in terms of it having reach into those countries where wanted, criminals, by the World Court or the International Criminal Court can go and extract someone, have them arrested, then extradited to The Hague. It doesn't work that simple, okay? Anyway, the ICC warrant is international law, but only when those countries sign on to it or is a part of it. The U.S. never ratified the Rome Statute, so American courts, police, and mayors have no legal hook to enforce it. NYPD authority comes from state and federal law, not the ICC. Even Mamdani's own allies and Representative Jerry Nadler called the pledge unrealistic, saying the city of New York has no jurisdiction to do such a thing. And then you got to look at it like, on the face of it, Jerry Nadler is not going to let that happen anyway. All right. Because Jerry Nadler support the Zionist state of Israel, But anyway, federal government controls this. It is not a city that controls these types of moves or actions. Arresting a sitting head of government is a matter of foreign policy, diplomatic relations, and possibly diplomatic head of state immunity. All right. All federal domains. So in other words, Benjamin Netanyahu could go into New York, any city within any state or city within the country, and basically kill somebody and have diplomatic immunity. All right. He won't be arrested. He'll be, put on a plane, sent back to Zionist Israel. So that's how much, power the federal government grants to sitting heads of states when they're here in the United States. It would have to be very egregious, to hold a sitting head, detain or even arrest one, for that matter. It has to be something that is just woefully wrong and egregious. What Benjamin Netanyahu was doing in Palestine, especially specifically Gaza and now Lebanon, that's serious stuff. That's serious stuff. And yet he's not being held accountable to it, So this goes to show the level of immunity he has, because he visits other countries, regularly. In spite of the war with Lebanon and Iran, he's jet setting all over the place. Okay, so there's that. A mayor ordering the NYPD to seize a foreign prime minister would trigger an immediate federal intervention, State Department, Department of Justice, possibly the courts to stop it, and likely a diplomatic crisis. Trump has already said Netanyahu won't be arrested in New York, directly pushing back on Mamdani, just letting you know that's not going to happen, just a lot of hot air. This is basically what Trump is saying. The UN visit complicates it further, though. If Netanyahu comes for a UN General Assembly session, he's likely to be covered by the U.S. UN headquarters agreement, which gives foreign officials some protection from arrest while transiting to, from, and attending UN business. Another layer NYPD couldn't just override. All right. What Mamdani has actually said, he's been consistent but vague on mechanism, saying his office is still looking into arresting Netanyahu if the Israeli leader visits, and that his legal department is actively discussing whether he has that authority. So the guy seems to be hell bent on, gaffling, arresting, detaining Benjamin Netanyahu. I would like to see that occur, as I'm sure most of us would. But whether or not that is a reality that can actually take place, again, is yet to be seen. Legal precedents, there's nothing on it. Whether he even has the legal authority to do it seems to be not in the cards for him. All right. But he did go on to say, he said, and I quote, "Whatever the law allows me to do in New York City, that's what we will do. But we won't be writing our own laws to that end quote." That's a mayor being deliberately, non-committal on specifics while keeping the campaign promise alive rhetorically. All right. So this is, I imagine, a campaign promise he made before coming mayor, that if he becomes mayor and Benjamin Netanyahu sets foot in New York City, he's going to try to arrest him. So he's trying to keep true to that commitment or that promise. But it is not a concrete, not even from this position, it doesn't seem to be a concrete operational plan or something that he can actually do, barring all the laws that would prevent him from doing it, it's way different than, let's say, the United States going to Venezuela and abducting, kidnapping, and then detaining and holding hostage Maduro from Venezuela. It's a totally different thing, totally different. So, there that is, and it remains to be seen again what exactly will take place with Benjamin Netanyahu. Has Benjamin Netanyahu responded in terms of what Mamdani said about his arrest? We don't know. There's a possibility that he had a response to that, and Benjamin just is just as cocky and unthwarted or concerned about what people say about him as much as Donald Trump is. These are two peas in a pod, to be quite frank. But I think Benjamin, I'm pretty sure yes to that question. Did he have a response? And it seems as though he did. When asked about Mamdani's arrest threat, Netanyahu responded on radio host Sid Rosenberg's show, saying he believes Mamdani secretly hates America. How does that make sense? How does that statement even make sense? But I get the rhetoric. I get what he's trying to say. Mamdani is, I think, reportedly a socialist, a communist socialist, something to that effect. And he would to most resemble that of a Middle Eastern appearance, right? Whether or not he's a Muslim, I cannot speak to. But if you listen to what Benjamin Netanyahu's response was, it's real clear that he's trying to sow a seed there. He says, Mamdani secretly hates America, unquote. That's the extent, anyway, of his direct public response so far, dismissive rather than substantive. And he didn't engage with the legal specifics of the ICC warrant or Mamdani's jurisdiction argument. All right. So we wait to see what's going to take place with this. To help us along, give us a little more context, of course, I have a clip. Let's show this clip. Before I do, as always, also, please like, share, follow, comment, and subscribe. You are tapped in. This is the Art of Political Discourse. This is where we come and have these conversations and bring to you informative as much as educational news and things, or, you know, events taking place that could very well affect you, your life politically. All right. So that being said, let's get to this clip. Very insightful, man. Mamdani is on a mission. He's on a crusade to get Benjamin Netanyahu. And a lot of people think rightfully so. There are a lot who think that Benjamin Netanyahu should be buried under the jail. In fact, just buried, you know, as of yet, that's, you know, that hasn't happened. And we're sure that Benjamin Netanyahu knows what countries to fly into, you know, rather than flying in the countries he know he'll be arrested immediately as he deboards the plane, you know. So he's very careful about his travels, though he jet sets from country to country. Those that do not or are not a part of the ICC, you know, apparatus in terms of turning over world criminals, you know. So Netanyahu's careful in that respect. All right. All right, let's get to this clip. And this is courtesy of the Hindustan Times, okay?
Has the United States effectively become a no-go zone for Netanyahu? With New York's own mayor now placing the Israeli Prime Minister squarely in his political crosshairs ahead of a major UN visit? Is New York's mayor genuinely gearing up to arrest the Israeli Prime Minister when he arrives in September, turning a routine UN visit into a potential diplomatic and legal showdown? Has Mamdani deliberately revived his ICC arrest threat right ahead of Bibi's scheduled UN visit, signaling that this is no longer just campaign rhetoric, but a real legal confrontation in the making? With ties between Trump and Netanyahu already strained over Iran, will the US president actually step in to save Bibi from Mamdani, or has their relationship deteriorated too far for that kind of intervention?
Well, let's be clear. One thing is for sure, you know, Trump is going to continue to do what he's told to do, in spite of what a lot of people think about the presidency of the United States. The individuals sitting in that seat do not do what they want per se. They do what they're told on, you know, on the whole of it. They have instructions that they follow to a letter. All right. Now, anything they do outside of that is done to where it does not affect the overall script of what was placed before them and decided by those who run everything for him to enact. All this other stuff we see on the side, the insider trading, Trump doing and saying things that just seems far-fetched and unbecoming of a sitting president of the United States. Trump is within his rights, and I'm pretty sure based upon that committee that runs him and runs the country, they allow it. And he knows that. He knows exactly how far to go, how observed to be, you know, obnoxious and extreme. He has limitations. Know that. All right. So that relationship is not going to be wrecked. It's not going to be sidelined. It's not going to be decreased in scope, manner, or anything else. That relationship will continue until such a time the American people severs the ties of the Zionist regime, Israel, with that of the United States. And that in and of itself would be a miracle, you know, because again, we fail to realize here in the United States that people that we pick as our representatives in government, the halls of power of Congress, as well as the Senate, are not there to do our bidding. Okay. Just so you know that. I think you all should know that. Did you know that? If not, hey, there's a whole lot to this you need to know then.
Amid the broader strains of ongoing regional war, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now faces a fresh and very public arrest threat coming directly from New York City's own mayor. Zohan Mamdani has reiterated in no uncertain terms that Netanyahu should be arrested the moment he sets foot in New York City, doubling down on a position he has held for months. Mamdani told the New York Times that the city is actively reviewing its available legal options ahead of the upcoming UN meeting, suggesting this threat now has real bureaucratic machinery behind it. New York's mayor confirmed that detailed discussions are already underway with the city's own legal department, indicating that officials are seriously exploring how such an arrest could actually be carried out. All of this comes ahead of Benjamin Netanyahu's scheduled visit to address the UN General Assembly in September, setting up a potential collision course between the two leaders on American soil. Mamdani said, and I quote, "I believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu belongs in The Hague. He's a war criminal who has been charged by the International Criminal Court. And what you will find is that is an opinion that is held by many purely because of what his actions have wrought over these last many years. I've also said that I will follow the laws that we have here in New York City because I believe that there is an importance in following the law as a leader who presides over our city. I think what we have seen from New Yorkers, what we've seen from Americans, when we talk about this hunger for a new kind of politics, it's a hunger to move beyond the bankruptcy that characterizes a lot of politics today. And it is hard to find a more bankrupt policy approach than what our country has done to Gaza and to Palestine, and how it hasn't been specific to any one party."
Every patient gets a personalized approach when they come into Cenegenics.
Our performance health assessment.
What we see transpiring, taking place in Palestine and Gaza, and also you can't leave out Lebanon, hasn't been the doing of one particular party in these United States in the government. So he's saying just point blank, Democrats as well and as much as Republicans have a hand in this. They are in support of what we see taking place in Palestine, and they are in no hurry, either party, to stop the genocide that's taking place here. That's him saying that straight out and straightforward, that Democrats are just as guilty as Republicans in sitting back and watching this genocide unfold before our eyes. Interesting.
Israel's UN envoy Danny Danon fired back sharply, arguing that it is actually Mamdani, not Netanyahu, who deserves to be arrested for failing his own city and its residents. Danny Danon said, and I quote, "Mamdani is failing to govern New York. Instead of focusing on his responsibilities as mayor and confronting the rising wave of anti-Semitism in his city, he has chosen to incite hostility and generate headlines by attacking the state of Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu will come to New York, address the United Nations General Assembly with pride, and stand before the world to state Israel's truth and its unwavering right to defend its citizens." Unquote. Notably, this is not a new position for Mamdani, who had previously and publicly promised to enforce ICC warrants against foreign leaders visiting New York City. The International Criminal Court issued its original arrest warrant for Netanyahu over the Gaza war back in November 2024, a warrant that continues to shadow him at every international appearance. This entire standoff unfolds as reports increasingly claim that ties between Trump and Netanyahu have grown strained over Iran, raising doubts about whether Washington would even intervene on Bibi's behalf. US Vice President J.D. Vance accused elements within the Israeli government of attempting to undermine Washington's diplomatic outreach toward Iran. Vance made the remarks during a wide-ranging interview with podcast host Joe Rogan while discussing the Trump administration's Iran policy. The vice president said he had faced a well-funded political campaign following his support for the Iran peace memorandum. Vance said the attacks were aimed at discrediting him for backing President Donald Trump's negotiation strategy with Tehran. J.D. Vance said, and I quote, "There was this Time article that came out yesterday. It lists a bunch of people who have been paid by a former Trump campaign person who was himself paid by certain elements within the Israeli government. And those people are attacking me viciously for trying to accomplish the negotiation objective that the president set for the country." Unquote. Earlier, Time magazine reported that a pro-Israel influence campaign targeted young conservative voters across the United States. The report said former Trump campaign manager Brad Parscale helped lead the communications effort aimed at that audience. Time cited FORA filings alleging that the campaign was directed and financed by Israeli authorities. According to the report, the effort sought to prevent younger MAGA supporters from turning against Israel over the Iran conflict.
And this is what we see playing out in American society, especially with the young. They are totally against Israel as much as they are against the genocide taking place in Palestine. Israel is attempting to label the American youth, those who are not in support of what's happening to the Gazians or the Palestinians. There's an attempt by Zionist regime of Israel to label young Americans as anti-Semitic. All right. Imagine that. All because they're saying, hey, man, what you're doing is wrong. Israel tends to think that anytime someone speaks against some policy or action that they have taken that that harms others, anytime someone speaks out against that type of policy, they are immediately labeled as anti-Semitic. And there are efforts being applied by the Israeli regime that are directed towards the youth here in America to try to convert, to recondition their mindset in terms of how they view the Israeli individual as well as the government, the country, and its actions. Good luck with that. I don't think that's going to work anytime soon. In fact, the more that Israel does what it does and then, screams and complains about not being respected or not being supported, the more the youth here, especially in the United States, goes against them. So it's no surprise that Israel would have plans in place, actions that they're taking to try to silence and or dissuade American youth from looking at them as these aggressors, this evil regime, this evil country. And keep in mind that what Israel, the Zionist regime of Israel is doing in Palestine, as much as Lebanon, is supported by over 80% of the citizens in the so-called occupied land of Israel. The citizens supported anywhere between 78% to 80, let's say 80% or better. They support the genocide and the leveling of Palestine in order to build or to put in place this greater Israel plan that they have. So just keep that in mind. And also other factors, regarding the trying to convince American youth that Israel is a good partner, a fair player.
J.D. Vance said, and I quote, "It's social media posts, it's leaking to reporters, they're attacking me obsessively saying that we should not be negotiating with Iran. We should just keep the military campaign going indefinitely. People have come after me and said I'm influenced by Qatar, that I'm influenced by foreign governments, that I take my marching orders from Tucker Carlson. And there's just so much out there. Foreign governments try to influence the United States all the time. Israel does it. Other countries do it. What bothers me is when American leadership allows that influence to affect their judgment and to affect what they are advocating for. There are some people within the Israeli system we know beyond a shadow of a doubt who are manipulating and trying to change American public opinion to keep the war going on indefinitely." Vance said President Trump opposed an Iranian nuclear weapon based on America's own strategic interests rather than pressure from foreign governments. The vice president has emerged as one of the Trump administration's strongest defenders of the Iran Memorandum of Understanding and renewed diplomacy. Vance has also previously urged members of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government to support President Trump's diplomatic approach toward Iran.
I just did the math. If my husband dies tomorrow, we'd be screwed because my family would need over.
And it looks as if you look at the two, how they're looking at each other, there's hatred there. There's hatred there. And I'm quite sure Benjamin Netanyahu understands that J.D. Vance cannot stand him or the Zionist regime of Israel. You can look at him and say, that's his look. His look is telling me, I'm gonna get you some way, somehow. I'm gonna see your downfall. And Benjamin is looking back like, I'll get you first. Or if I don't get you first, look at that. Look at that. So then the question does come back into the forefront as to whether or not this relationship will hold up. We're quite sure here at CAP that there are individuals in the political apparatus, in the political sphere, the government in this country, that by any means necessary will make sure that this relationship, that the relationship between the United States and Israel never severs, ever severs. And then there are those who are working behind the scenes and in front of the cameras to sever these ties in such a way that's unprecedented. It's unprecedented, But again, look at these two individuals and look at the animosity and hatred they have for one another. That's something, isn't it? All right. That is something else. Okay, so there that is. We know that Mamdani wants to arrest in September Benjamin Netanyahu. He wants to keep his campaign pledge and promise to those who voted him in as mayor of New York City. Now, as to whether or not he has that authority is yet to be seen. As to whether or not he's actually going to go through with this, we'll know come September when Netanyahu is to stand before the General Assembly and make some propaganda type speech to the people. Their efforts or their plan, their objective is to change the minds of American citizens, is to get the support of American citizens back in their corner, because they've lost support of quite a few. I think the percentage of Americans who support Israel has dropped down to, I think, the high 30 percentile, or either the low 40 percentile. Those who are against Israel is up actually past the 50% percentile into the 60% percentile. So Israel is in trouble. I've seen some content, in fact, where they're pointing this out, and it's so bad for Israel all over the world, but even more so in the United States, that Israel has a plan, allegedly, to attack the United States in any means it sees fit, because there is a certain hatred in the Zionist regime of Israel for the United States and its people. But they have plans in terms of infiltrating, some of which allegedly they have already done. The government infiltrated the government, the military, the judicial system, the banking system, of course, all those things. Their plan is, again, to make sure that if America turns on them, and whether they do or not doesn't matter to them, their ideology is that they can't stand America anyway. Look up Benjamin Netanyahu saying some decade or so ago, speaking in such disregard towards the United States and its people, its policies and government, that it would send chills down your spine. They look at the United States government as a cash cow, and their intent is to drain it, is to suck it dry of its resources, its power, and everything else. And if possible, put the people, the American citizen, in such a position where they have no power to defend themselves should, let's say, allegedly some invasion tend to happen here in this country. There's a lot being said by the Zionist regime, or political regime in Israel, about the United States. There's a certain hatred. Again, if you go just look at that photograph, Benjamin Netanyahu, when he's face to face with most American politicians, period, don't care who they are, whether they think they have a good relationship with him or not, he has an evil look about himself that says, I can't stand you guys. I can't stand the United States. As long as you're giving us your money, though, your taxpayer dollars in the tens of billions every year, I will tolerate you. But as soon as that stops, I have a plan for you as well. Okay. That being said, you guys let me know what you think about this piece, whether or not this is possible. And I'm speaking specifically now towards Mamdani being in a position or having the authority to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu should he step or deboard a plane on a New York City tarmac, all right, or wherever he presents himself. Is this feasible? Is this something that is likely to happen, or is this just political fodder, just a politician saying something to appease his constituents? I'm tending to think along those lines that this is not really an authority that he has or that he can pull off, because there's so much in place to prevent that from the federal level on down. Can you imagine a war breaking out, a gun battle breaking out over the federal government protecting a prime minister, with diplomatic immunity against a city government that says, hey, he has no diplomatic immunity. He is a war criminal. He's sought, throughout the world. There's an arrest warrant for his arrest, and many countries are looking to do what I'm attempting to do. Can you imagine that, though, taking place? I can. Will it take place? Probably not, but I would like to see that happen. In any respect, Benjamin Netanyahu will supposedly touch down here in September, and we'll see whether or not Mamdani can pull off the impossible. All right. This is his mission impossible. Let's see how that works out for him. All right. Again, leave your thoughts in the comments. If you have any thoughts as to whether or not this thing is something that's even, again, possible, put it in there. If you think this is just a lot of hot air by Mamdani, let us know that. In any respect, we'll read all comments. And until next time, we want you guys to know we appreciate your viewership and participation. Take care of yourselves and one another.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you